Of all the unbuilt attractions in Universal Orlando history, few sound quite as odd, or as intriguing, as the rumored Grinch Coaster, a Mount Crumpit themed roller coaster racing through the snowy cliffs of Whoville, blending the whimsy of Dr. Seuss with the thrill of a coaster. This is the story of Universal's Canceled Grinch Coaster, how close it got, what it would have been, and why it never happened. When Islands of Adventure opened in 1999, Seuss Landing immediately stood out. It was the only land dedicated entirely to a single author's creations, a world of impossible curves, vibrant colors, and characters that defined childhood. But while the rest of Universal's lands continued to evolve over the years, Seuss Landing stayed almost completely frozen in time. And yet, deep inside Universal Creative, there were discussions, big discussions, about finally expanding Seuss Landing with a headline attraction. However, to truly understand where this idea came from, we have to rewind to the early 2010s, a time when Universal was booming from the success of the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. The resort was flush with money, attendance was skyrocketing, and suddenly every corner of Universal Orlando was being considered for expansion. Seuss Landing, however, remained largely untouched since opening day. Its rides, Cat in the Hat, Carousel, One Fish, Two Fish, and the High in the Sky Seuss Trolley Train Ride, what a long title, were all charming, family-friendly attractions, but none qualified as a true headliner. So Universal Creative began exploring ideas for something new, something that could finally give Seuss Landing the anchor attraction it lacked. That's where the Grinch came in. The Grinch was already one of the most recognizable Seuss characters, thanks to both the 1966 animated classic and the 2000s live-action film starring Jim Carrey. Universal had long leaned into the character during its annual Grinchmas celebrations, but the thought of giving him a permanent large-scale attraction was irresistible. This wouldn't have been the first time Universal had built something Grinch-related. Back in the 2000s, Universal introduced Grinchmas to celebrate the release of the live-action movie. To capture the spirit of Whoville, Seuss Landing was transformed with elaborate decorations, fake snow, and Christmas lights. Guests could interact with the Who's, attend festival performances, and even step inside the Grinch's lair. For a few years, there was even a full Grinch walkthrough attraction, located where the High in the Sky Seuss Trolley Train Ride now stands. It allows guests to literally walk through the world of the Jim Carrey movie. Bring it back, Universal. It was intimate, seasonal, and dripping with charm, but also very temporary. The walkthrough was eventually replaced with the Seuss Trolley Ride that opened in 2006, leaving Seuss Landing without a Grinch attraction for good, even a temporary one. Before that, though, a Grinch coaster was one of the first expansion plans for IOA back when it opened in 1999. It would have been on the spare patch of land near Cat in the Hat. Back then, it was expected to be a bobsleigh-style coaster, a coaster model which is sadly basically extinct at this point. However, by the early 2010s, Universal saw an opportunity to bring the character back, but this time on a much larger scale. The new attraction was envisioned as a Mount Crumpit coaster, a snowy mountain rising above Seuss Landing, serving as the Grinch's home, in the setting for a wild family-friendly coaster adventure. According to insider reports, the attraction was designed as a no-inversion coaster, fun, fast, and accessible to a wide audience. The tone would have been mischievous rather than scary, capturing the chaos of the Grinch's wild ride down Mount Crumpit, as he attempts to return Christmas to the Who's below. But the most intriguing part of the rumor came from what kind of coaster it might have been. At the time, Universal was said to be closely watching Busch Gardens Williamsburg's Verbolten, that combined outdoor thrills with indoor show scenes and a surprise free-fall track element. Riders on Verbolten experience a sudden drop section where the track literally gives way beneath them, sending the train plummeting before launching back out into the daylight. Imagine that technology, but inside Mount Crumpit. Guests could have raced through icy caverns, dodged the Grinch's inventions, and plunged into the dark heart of his lair as the track suddenly dropped beneath their sleighs. It would have been a perfect fit for the chaotic spirit of the story, a ride that's equal parts comedy, surprise, and speed. Another version of the concept leaned in a different direction, a more traditional scenic coaster experience, inspired by Disney's Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. That version would have used large-scale outdoor rockwork resembling the snow-capped cliffs, sending sleighs weaving around Whoville and up towards the peak of Mount Crumpit, before descending in a twisting runaway finale. In many ways, it would have been Universal's answer to Big Thunder Mountain, a highly themed, family-accessible coaster that blends storytelling with kinetics. Whether it leaned more towards Verbolten's track trickery or Big Thunder's environmental immersion, both versions carried the signature Universal energy, an attraction that could balance storytelling and spectacle. And as wild as some of the concepts sound, there were even whispers that one iteration of the project could have stretched beyond Seuss Landing entirely. Some insiders speculated that the coaster might have connected Islands of Adventure and Universal Studios Florida, departing from Seuss Landing and arriving near what was once the Blue Man Group Theater. Why? I don't know, actually. That's a really good question. Universal be crazy sometimes. It's honestly hard to imagine the logistics, to be totally honest, but at the time, Universal was riding high on the success of the Hogwarts Express. So the notion of another park connecting ride wasn't completely outlandish. Unfortunately, as with many ambitious Universal concepts, reality soon caught up with imagination. On paper, the Mount Crumpit coaster had everything Universal could want: family appeal, an iconic character, and an endless merchandise potential. But in practice, the project ran headfirst into a mountain of challenges. Space was the first problem. Seuss Landing's compact footprint left little room for large-scale construction. Expanding outwards towards City Walk would have interfered with back-of-house operations. Both options were technically possible, but expensive. Universal was doing well, but not like, Epic Universe well. The Grinch's world exists in a strange balance of holiday cheer and cynical humor, which is part of what makes it so memorable, but also difficult to translate into a ride. Too dark or sarcastic, and it wouldn't fit Seuss Landing's whimsical tone. Too lighthearted, and it might lose what makes the Grinch distinct. Universal's priorities were also shifting. Following the monumental success of the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, Universal began focusing on attractions that could serve as the anchor of entire lands, not just standalone rides. A single Grinch coaster, even one as creative as this, didn't fit the new business model. As strong as the IP is for Grinch, projects like Diagon Alley were all in motion, commanding huge budgets and strategic focus. And finally, there was creative control. The estate of Dr. Seuss, especially after the death of his widow Audrey Geisel, has been careful about how Seuss's creations are adapted. The live-action Grinch film had already tested that relationship. Any major new attraction, especially one that leaned into the chaotic, mischievous energy of the Jim Carrey version, would have needed the estate's full approval, a hurdle that might have been difficult to clear. As the 2010s went on, the Grinch coaster quietly disappeared from Universal's long-term plans, channeling its resources into Epic Universe and future expansions around more current IPs. It's easy to see why fans still talk about the Grinch coaster and still want it. It makes a ton of sense. The idea of racing through Mount Crumpit, dodging gadgets, slaying through snowbanks, and plunging into Grinch's cave sounds like the perfect blend of Universal chaos and Seussian charm. It would have given Seuss Landing the headliner it's always needed, and tied beautifully into the park's holiday tradition of Grinchmas. But perhaps the most interesting thing about the Grinch coaster isn't that it was canceled, it's how its DNA lived on. Universal Creative has always recycled and evolved its best ideas. What started as a rumor about a Grinch-themed Verbolten may have re-emerged years later in Hagrid's, with its multi-directional moments and its drop track. In that sense, maybe the Grinch coaster never truly died, it simply transformed, as Universal's creative ambitions grew larger and the technology evolved, and they began working with Intamin, of course. And yet, every Christmas, when Seuss Landing glows with lights and the Grinch prowls through Whoville, it's hard not to imagine what could have been. A towering Mount Crumpit above the lagoon, sleighs dashing through the snow, and the echoes of laughter and screams blending with the Who's carols below. What do you think of the Mount Crumpit coaster? Let me know down below. And as always, remember rule number 5, relax and enjoy the ride. Thanks for watching.